Yeah, so all right, we're going to be covering first album tonight. It's a Shame About Ray by the Lemonheads. And in the opening montage, you heard a clip from the title song, It's a Shame About Ray, and now you're going to hear a clip from Rudderless. All the way down to the lake. Found the lake was there. How much more could I take? Yeah. Walk back home to my place. All right, so run some numbers here. It's a Shame About Ray by the Lemonheads comes in at number 271 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums, number 23 in 1992. Number 1,478 of all time. It's the Lemonheads' highest rated album on Best Ever Albums. It did not make Rolling Stone's list, and the Lemonheads are ranked number 951 of overall artist rankings. And actually, is it the Lemonheads? Do I say the Lemonheads are ranked, or the Lemonheads is ranked?
The Lemonheads
as the band.
The Lemonheads are,
because it's one band.
It would be R though.
It's one band. Lemonheads is ranked.
But it's a singular band, but it's plural members, so it's
Got it.
R.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a gerund, right? Isn't that what that is?
Yeah. Well, it's like no, it's not a gerund. It's not a gerund. A gerund's an ing word, my man. So yeah.
Oh, okay, right. So
Continue. Yeah.
Anyway, it's the first time we're covering the Lemonheads on our podcast. This album was released on June 2nd, 1992. It is their fifth album out of a total of 10. And the genres that the Lemonheads kind of encapsulate include alt-rock, grunge, pop rock, jangle pop, power pop, and influenced by a number of artists, including Black Flag, Husker Du, Mission of Burma, REM, The Minutemen, Graham Parsons, Neil Young, Big Star, Jonathan Richman, and The Replacements. Some peers of theirs include Buffalo Tom, Belly, Sugar, Nirvana, The Pixies, Dinosaur Jr., Matthew Sweet, Urge Overkill, and Teenage Fan Club. And not a ton of people were influenced by the Lemonheads. This isn't the type of band that's really going to be influencing people because they're not really, pushing any boundaries or anything like that. But bands that have enjoyed the Lemonheads include Ben Queller, Fountains of Wayne, Ryan Adams, and Ben Lee. Lemonheads' highest charting album is 1993's Come On Feel the Lemonheads, which is the album after this, and that did hit number 56 in the U.S., and their highest charting single was a song from that particular album in 1993, Into Your Arms, that hit number 67. And a little history of the band. They were formed in Boston in 1986 by Evan Dando and a couple of his high school buddies, Ben Dealey and Jesse Peretz. And originally they were called the Whelps, WHELPS, but shortly after changed their name to the Lemonheads. And yes, that is an homage to the candy. That is sour on the outside, sweet on the inside.
I did not know that. Wow. Okay.
Yep.
I thought that was just okay. Interesting.
Yep. So the Lemonheads are one of those bands. It's kind of like a Nine Inch Nails thing, where essentially it's Evan Dando and whoever he happens to be playing with at any particular time. Wikipedia actually lists 24 past members of the band. And in this, for this album, it included Evan Dando on vocals and guitars, with Juliana Hatfield on bass and backing vocals, and David Ryan on drums. But I also found it interesting, there were several other people that were in the Lemonheads, or they played with them or collaborated with them at some point, including other artists that we have covered previously on CTS. And that includes Bill Stevenson and Carl Alvarez from The Descendants. They were members of the Lemonheads for a brief period of time. Jay Mascis played with them. Or teamed up with them, and also Murph from Dinosaur Jr. He was the drummer. He was a member of the Lemonheads for a minute. Fred Mascherino from Taking Back Sunday. I know we haven't covered them, but he has played with them. Belinda Carlisle and Rick James collaborated with them on Come On Feel the Lemonheads. And Liv Tyler and Garth Hudson and Kate Moss were all people that at one point or another collaborated with them. So Evan Dando
model Kate Moss?
Model Kate Moss, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep, she's not. I don't. She teamed up with them. It was on like a
Just
teamed
up means sleep with. Is that what we're saying there?
Well, probably with Evan Dando, it probably meant both. Yeah. So, so a little bit about this record. The title the title track and the name of the album was inspired by a quote that Evan Dando had seen in a Sydney newspaper. He was in Australia for a period of time, and a lot of the songs that they had written for this album were written in Australia. And in this article, he saw a reference to a kid called Ray who kept getting kicked out of every school that he went to. So he kind of felt bad for him and said that, that's a shame. So there you go. And the cover of this album, the person on the cover is actress Polly Noonan. Do either of you know who Polly Noonan is?
I do not. No.
Is she the protagonist of the song by Nirvana?
Oh, that I have no idea. I
Okay,
have
I
no
don't
idea.
know.
But Polly Noonan, I can tell you the one acting credit that I was familiar with was Ferris Bueller's Day Off. She was the kid on the bus at the end of the movie who had the gummy bears in her pocket and gave them to the principal.
Oh,
If you
wow.
remember that
Okay.
part of So that somehow she is on the cover of this album, and that is her car behind her.
Okay.
So there you go. You guys might have noticed at the end of this album, it does end with a cover of Simon and Garfunkel's Mrs. Robinson. This was not originally part of this record. It was in essentially the record company insisted that they put it on after it got some traction. They recorded that song as a tribute to the 25th anniversary of The Graduate. And I guess Evan Dando did not want this to happen, and he was pretty angry that they did put it on the end of it. So initial pressings of this did not have that song on the end, but most ones afterwards did have it. So kind of an afterthought there. Evan Dando was inducted into the Boston Music Awards Hall of Fame in 2015, and in 2008 he received a Classic Album Award for It's a Shame About Ray at the inaugural NME US Awards held in LA. And I guess Entertainment Weekly reported that after he received that award, he threw it in the garbage off stage. So he didn't really think too highly of that.
Why did he even show up?
I got a couple Evan Dando stories when I get to my take. But in 2004, John, I was surprised by this. Dando toured with the MC5 on a 41-date tour where he performed as the lead vocalist. So,
Wow.
So
That's
there you
crazy.
go. A little history on this. And I don't know, Josh, I don't know were you familiar with this record before?
No, I'm not familiar with this record or the Lemonheads really. I remember you going to see them.
Yeah.
At one point when we
did.
were living together
In Jacksonville.
Yeah.
I think I went by myself.
You did.
So,
I guess in retrospect, I should have gone. But
Yeah. Well, there you go, Josh. Let's have you do the first take. What'd you think?
yeah, I really like this album. Right off the bat, it reminded me of Replacements or Big Star. I think he's definitely in that vein. I also got a real kind of like druggy vibe off of this album. I think there's like explicit or implicit drug references throughout the album. Is that fair to say? Oh, I mean, My Drug Buddy, obviously.
My Drug Buddy, yeah.
But
I mean,
Ceiling
and
Fan
Evan
in My
Dando
Stew,
definitely.
maybe, or something. I don't know.
Yeah, he's certainly has dabbled in his fair share of drugs. So yeah.
But I feel like he writes pretty good songs, and there's a strong melody throughout in each of these songs, and they have a captivating appeal to me. I like his instrumentation choices. I feel like there's a little bit of jangle guitar and acoustic guitar throughout. I like the organ and rock and stroll. I like the in the song Hannah and Gabby, it's kind of like country with like pedal steel. So I feel like there's a little bit of different genres that he's dabbling in as well. And these songs just have a, good construction to them. And just, I feel like they're just well-crafted songs ultimately. And I feel like the album as a whole is pretty strong. I like the title track, the female part that I'm assuming that's Juliana Hatfield adding her vocals to that.
Yep.
And the song Rudderless, I'm glad you picked that song. That was one of my standout tracks on the album. It sounds kind of emo in a little way, or like emo precursor with a guitar chord on it, but it just is an example of the appeal of this album to me. And I think he writes good hooks as well, and kind of the choruses are appealing, and it's just a strong, solid album throughout. I would say this is like, we went at length on Toad the Wet Sprocket. I feel like this is a stronger, kind of more polished maybe a slightly lighter sounding type of music that's in the same vein as that band. And but yeah, I'm interested to see what else, the follow-up album. If we listen to that, I may check it out. If we don't, but it's yeah, this is good stuff. I like it.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about this album. I enjoyed it, but it didn't transcend for me, if I'm being honest. The lyrics are pretty solid. I think especially it's very like Gen X-y. The titles of the songs are very like angsty, I'd say. They're very much about like Gen X love and like sort of processing the world in sort of the stereotypical, not in a bad way, but like when we think of how the Gen X filter of the world, the sort of that Singles, right? The movie
Bit
sort of
part
filter.
Would be an example, I think. Of
Bit
that.
part would be a very good example of that. Exactly. Yes. And so sort of like the world is a big place and I'm trying to find my way in it and all I've got is my authenticity and my love. I think probably sort of thematically, maybe not sonically, but thematically, the album that I thought most sounded like this was the Violent Femmes album that we covered in the 80s. However, I like that one a little bit more. There was a little bit more visceralness to it than this one had. I think this one is sort of straight ahead, 90s alt rock. I was a little disappointed that there weren't more hooks in this album because the big song I think of the Lemonheads besides that cover of Miss Robinson is Into Your Arms, which has a pretty big hook and a glowingness. But this album, even the big song It's a Shame About Ray, the chorus, and the hook just kind of sits there. So that is something different for me, Josh, than something like Big Star or The Replacements, who were not lacking in big hooks. I think this wasn't as much big hooks. It was a little bit more angsty, but angsty like romantic angsty than angsty angry or angsty depressed or stuff like that. And that's okay. It's probably a healthier place to come from. But because of that, I think I can only rate this in the middle a little bit. It was very interesting to do this album in the Gin Blossoms, and I'll save my take for that later because there's sort of different variations of this type of music, and I'll have a lot to say on that. But I think in the middle. Now, Matt, I know you love this band, and so tell me what speaks to you about this band, maybe at a higher level than it does to me.
Well, I have this album has been a cornerstone in my record collection for basically since. I mean, I didn't get it right away.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of the first bands / albums that I ever owned that I remember A, really enjoying, and B, feeling like I had the inside scoop on something that few other people did, right? Because this was not, even though they had singles and hits and stuff like that, this was not something I at least with this album, I remember the next album being a little bit bigger and being on MTV more. But this was kind of one of the first experiences I had of like having a band that I felt to some extent was like my own band, and I knew something that other people didn't. And I think as a 14, 15-year-old kid, is kind of, for me, was kind of a relatively powerful kind of thing, and there was a legit like love of this record, and I still do. Like, it was really great going back to it this week, and I think you're right, John. I wouldn't say that this is like hooks all over the place. So like a comparison to a Big Star or a power pop band that kind of really draws you in with hooks. That's not really there, but it's like it's more subtle, and there's a rawness to this as well. Like, that's one of the things I kind of picked up here. I'm picking up like, well, there's definitely a punk vibe here, and you can see like the Husker Du kind of influence. You can see that in a song like Rock and Stroll, for example. That's kind of got this like a faster paced kind of offbeat punk aesthetic to it.
It's not as in your face though, by any means.
No, correct,
very much,
correct,
yeah.
right. It's very right. It's not a it's certainly not hardcore or anything like that, or even like full blown punk. But there's elements to it, right? And there's elements of country, like Josh said. Hannah and Gabby is a very that's a Graham Parsons influence there with the steel guitar and more of an acoustic country vibe to it. and you have something that's a little bit more pop, and then you have something, yeah, like Rudderless. You mentioned that, Josh. Like that is a unique song to me. Like it's kind of an interesting way to play the guitar, the two layered guitars on top of each other, and it's just it doesn't really sound right, but the more I listened to it, the more I really liked it, and I like the way that it builds, and I love Evan Dando's voice. You know, he definitely is that Gen X slacker, persona for sure. And even today, I mean, I saw them a couple of months ago, and they were terrible because Evan Dando was hammered off of his mind, and he also it sounded like he was just coming off of a cold because his voice was not there, so he could only do the lower parts. At any time he needed to hit the higher register of his voice, he just phoned it in and kind of almost like spoke the words. And it was just they did not sound good at all. I actually left early. Like I was like, I can't watch this. This is like
killing my childhood.
A version of my childhood hero is totally like losing it on stage, and I just can't be a part of this anymore. So that was a little depressing. But yeah, I've always loved this album, and I think that the Lemonheads is I think that that's one of the big reasons why I like them, is because it's kind of like none of my friends were really into them. It's not like something that I went to college and everybody was like a Lemonhead. It was just it was kind of it's kind of been my own thing, and so there's a personal kind of connection there. But I love all these songs. It's very much like a Wire like kind of thing, where it's like this song's 1 minute and 48 seconds, this song's 2 minutes long. It's like very short songs. The album's like a half hour long. But I think that there's ballads. I think a song like Bit Part's really interesting because I think that's a catchy song, and then they just end it right. And Allison Starting to Happen's another great one that I've always liked. And I really liked Confetti. Probably the one that stood out to me that I hadn't really thought of as like one of the top songs was probably Confetti. That was a song that stood out to me this week. And of course, Mrs. Robinson. I love the way that it ends. Actually, I saw them play this entire album live at the Hard Rock Hotel in Orlando, and it was literally in the hotel lobby, like just beyond the bar. It was a concert it was one of the weirdest venues that I've ever seen. But they played this entire album, and they did not play Mrs. Robinson at the end because that's technically not part of the album. So the album actually ends with Frank Mills, which is a cover. I don't think you guys are theater people, and I don't really consider myself a theater person either, but that song is actually from the musical Hair. Okay. So that's what that song is from. So that's so I love this album. I know it's not going to make a lot of people's best of lists by any stretch, but I think that the Lemonheads certainly hold the spot for me. It's a very Gen X, a very 90s alt rock kind of band that I think could have had bigger things in store for them. I think they could have been bigger, and they could have done more than what they did. But Evan Dando, man, he's he liked his partying and his excess and his drugs and whatnot, and he's just one of these guys that just probably had a hard time keeping a band together, keeping it together for himself. I definitely recommend the album after this one. It's longer. It's probably too long, but John, I think that you're probably going to find some more of the hooks and more of the catchiness, more straight ahead kind of catchiness there than you will here. Josh, I would definitely recommend that. You could probably stop like the last like 4 songs. You probably don't need to do, but the majority of that album is very, very solid. So yeah, big thumbs up for me. This is a personal all-time favorite.
And do you like the cover? Do you guys like the cover of Mrs. Robinson? Of that,
I do.
How do you feel about that?
I do. I mean, it's different. It doesn't have the harmonies or whatever, but it's what a cover should be. It's like taking your own, like they kind of make a more rocked punk version of it, and I enjoy it. So yeah,
I don't dislike it. Yeah, I think I like it.
Yeah, I don't dislike it either. I just don't feel like there's enough there for it to be added on to the album. It's like if that became a hit, I'm like, why not just listen to the original? But I mean, I like it's
they're very
the
different.
nature.
Different versions.
Yeah,
So
it's not like the Cher Shoop Shoop song.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. True. I mean, they are. This is what a cover should be, right? I mean, this is kind of an angsty alt rock '90s band, and they turned that song, an acoustic, harmony laden, almost ballad, right, folk song, and they made a rockin' tune out of it, with a cool bass line. So yeah.
Well, this 2 final observations. I'd say if we look at like that thing of the origin of man with the various versions of stuff, I would say Replacements leads to this, which leads to like the Wallflowers. I feel like is what I would do, sort of as an evolutionary trend. And then I also say, for those of you that weren't around, if you want to hear what 1992 sounded like, just listen to Bit Part and Allison Starting to Happen, because I'm like, you cannot find a more 1992 two-pack of songs than those two songs. Thematically, lyrically, sonically, they're just like, even the names of the songs are like, I mean, this is the most Gen X-y of Gen X songs, like early Gen X, you know what I mean? It's the 90s that doesn't get talked about as much anymore, because somehow the millennials have taken the 90s and said it's really from like 1997 to like the end of the decade. But you know, I think for us, at least for Matt and I think when we say the 90s, we immediately go to like 91 through 95 first, right? 91 through 96-ish, I'd say. And that
96 starts to like hit and miss, but the early mid 90s, for sure.
Yeah. So there you go. Bit Part and Allison Starting to Happen. You'll get
I
a good
always
feel of
loved
what
Bit Part.
1992 is like.
That's got a little bit of I want a bit part in your life. I mean, it's a decent hook. It's it's not Stacey's mom or anything, but I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'll take it, Evan Dando.
Yeah. Fair enough. So a strong thumbs up from Matt, a pretty solid thumbs up from Josh, and a thumbs in the middle for me, I'd say.
Yeah, and I don't think we're covering any more Lemonheads, so you're gonna have to explore that on your you have to do that on your own.
Got it.
On your own time, Josh.
Sounds